Here's the thing about problem solving that most designers get wrong. They jump straight into solutions without actually understanding the problem. Most designers are busy pushing pixels, but the best ones, they pause, they ask questions, they diagnose before they design. Because in problem solving, curiosity beats creativity every single time. Hi, I'm Swati. I make $5,000 to $10,000 per month freelancing part-time as a UX consultant. If you're tired of being seen just as a person who makes things look pretty, this video is for you. Today, I'm sharing the framework that transformed me from an execution-only designer to a strategic partner. And it all started when I started to think like a process analyst. Before you solve a problem, you need to understand it. And that's where most designers go wrong. They lead with, I can design this flow for you, or I'm an expert in user experience and can build this modern dashboard for you. But here's what strategic designers do instead. They start with, can you walk me through your current process? See the difference? One approach is about what you can do, and the other is about what the client actually needs. This is especially critical if you're working on proprietary internal tools or B2B systems. You're not designing for the masses. You're designing for business workflows, handoffs, legacy systems, bottlenecks, and approval processes. You're designing for real business operations. And here's the thing, designing without this context is just for decoration. It might look pretty, but it won't solve anything. Now, I know what you're thinking, Swati, but I need to establish credibility. I need to show them that I'm qualified for the job. And yes, credentials do matter, but here's the thing, your qualifications got you in the room. What happens next determines whether you'll deliver real value. When you make the conversation about you and your skills, you're essentially saying, here's what I can build, hope it fits your problem. But when you make it about the client, their challenges, their processes, their goals, what you're saying is, let me understand your world better so I can create something that actually works for you. I've worked on proprietary applications for dozens of businesses, and the projects that succeeded weren't the ones where I impressed the clients with technical jargon. They were the ones where I asked better questions. Instead of saying, I'm an expert in Figma and I can build you a modern dashboard, try asking questions with genuine curiosity to understand what the client needs. Ask them, walk me through your typical day for your users. Where do they get stuck? Where do they feel frustrated? See the difference? One approach is about you and the other about the client's actual needs. Now, I have a bit of an unfair advantage here, and I want to share how it shaped my approach to every design project. I didn't start in design. My first job was as a business process analyst. No design degree. It was 2015 and Figma wasn't even born then, but I had one critical advantage. I was relentlessly curious about how the business actually worked. I'd sit in rooms with directors and department heads and asking questions like, where do things slow down in your process? What's costing you most time? What happens if it doesn't get fixed? These questions weren't about screens or interfaces. They were about systems, workflows, and real operational challenges. And here's what I discovered. When you ask the right questions about the problem, the right solutions show up almost on their own. As a business process analyst, I learned to interview stakeholders across different departments, map out current state processes, and identify bottlenecks. Most importantly, I understood what success actually looks like from a business perspective and not just a user perspective. When I transitioned into UX and design work, that curiosity and systematic approach came with me, and it completely changed how I approached every design project. So what does a good stakeholder interview actually look like? This is where my business process analyst background becomes invaluable, and I want to share this framework I use for every project. First, I understand what the current state is. Before you can design a better future, you need to map out what exists today. I always start by asking these questions. Can you walk me through your current process step by step? And I mean literally step by step. Don't accept high-level overviews. If they say we collect data and analyze it, ask, what does collecting data actually look like? Who does it? How long does it take? What tools do you use? For internal applications, I dig into the day-to-day reality. How many times do users switch between systems to complete a task? What information do they have to re-enter? Where do things typically go wrong? Next, understand the stakeholders. Every project has multiple people with different needs. The person paying for the solution might have different priorities than the person using it daily. I always ask, who are all the people affected by this process? What does success look like for each one of them? Then understand the business context. This is a crucial part for proprietary applications. Ask questions like, how does this process connect to your broader business goals? If we save users 10 minutes a day, what does that mean for the company? Are there any compliance requirements we need to consider? What happens during peak seasons or busy periods? Finally, understand the desired outcomes, not just features, but actual business results. I learned this the hard way. Clients often come with solution ideas saying they need a dashboard or they want to automate a workflow, but underneath every solution request is an outcome they're trying to achieve. So I ask, if this project is wildly successful, what changes for your business? How will you measure success? And what would have to be true for you to consider this the best investment you've made this year? Here's where the business process analyst mindset really shines. Most people jump from problem to a design solution, but there's a critical step in between, which is to design for the future state. Once I understand the current process and the desired outcomes, I work with stakeholders to envision what the ideal process would look like. Not just the ideal technology, but the ideal experience. I ask questions like, if you could wave a magic wand and fix everything about this process, what would a perfect day look like for your users? What steps would disappear? What information would be available instantly? How would different teams collaborate? This is where you start seeing real innovation opportunities. Maybe the solution isn't a better interface for the existing process. Maybe it's eliminating half of the process entirely. Maybe it's changing when and how information flow between the departments works. The solution isn't always a fancier design. Most times I end up designing something completely different than what the client initially requested, but it solves the real problem. That is why it's important to learn to be curious and ask the right questions. Before we wrap up, let me share these 3 common mistakes I see people making during the diagnosis phase. First is accepting assumptions as fact. Stakeholders will often tell you users hate this because it's too complicated, but when you actually observe the users, you might find they hate it because it's missing critical information and not because it's complex. Always dig deeper. Second, interviewing only decision makers. The person paying for the solution and the person using it daily often have very different perspectives. Make sure you talk to the actual end users and not just their managers. And the third one is rushing into solutions. I know it's tempting when you hear a problem and immediately see how you can fix it, but resist that urge. Spend more time in the problem space than you think you need. The insights you gain will lead to better solutions. Here's your shift. Stop obsessing over how things look and start obsessing over how things work. Stop leading with your design skills and start leading with your understanding of the client business. Be the one who sees the full picture. Be the one who asks what's broken in your process and what would success look like. That's how you level up from being a designer to a strategic partner. That's how you go from someone who executes tasks to someone who solves real business problems. The next time you start a project, resist the urge to impress clients with what you can build. Instead, impress them with how deeply you understand what they need built. Your design skills do matter, but your curiosity about the client's world is what separates good projects from transformational ones. If this approach resonates with you, hit that like button and let me know in the comments about a time when better problem understanding changed your project outcome. And if you want more content about building a better business application and becoming a more strategic designer, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.